Hi, everybody. My name is Robin Charbit. I'm from Insight Principles. And this video is designed to prepare you for the introduction session that you've been invited to. Now, I really want to cover three things on this video. So let me just share my screen so you can see what those are. So the first thing I want you to get from this video is a good sense of what we're going to try and explain, or what we'd like you to learn by watching it, okay? So I'm going to cover at a very, very high level, the content. The other thing I'd like to cover is why it's worth learning this. So, you're busy people, you've got a lot going on, so why spend an hour and a half, 1 hour, learning about this understanding? And consistent and linked to that, I'd also like to talk about how it's going to be a bit different from other things you might have learned. And then the last thing I'd like to cover is just some general advice how to get the most out of the hour and a half, so that it's a really good use of your time. Okay? So let's jump into the first one. What are we going to be sharing, or what would we like you to learn? Well, I know this is going to sound a bit interesting or different, but we're going to have you learn how the human mind works. So if you look at any other part of the physiology that makes us human, whether it's our heart, our immune system, how the skin heals itself when it gets a cut, there's some science behind how all that happens. Well, logically and obviously, there's also some science behind how the mind works. So that's primarily what we'd like to share with you. Now, just to give you a bit of an orientation to what we mean by how the mind works, I'd like to put up a very simple diagram that sort of distinguishes different ways to look at the human mind, so you get a sense of which one we're going to be looking at. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen and give you another image to look at. So the first level you could look at the human mind would be the content. So what are you thinking? So I could ask you what you have on your mind. I could tell you what I have on my mind, and we could talk about the content of our minds, right? So that's one level. We're not going to do that. The next level you could look at is what you could call the programming. Now, what we mean by programming is, as you've grown up and you've experienced things and thought about life and had people talk to you about things and gone through specific experiences, you have essentially become programmed. In my case, I'm British, I'm a chemical engineer, and given both of those parts of my background, I've received some programming, and it's made me sort of a bit of who I am today. So the programming you could view as why I think what I think. So if the content is what you think, the programming is the why. Now, it's a very rich and full aspect of the human mind. We're not going to look at that. It's more complicated than what we want to talk about. And so the third level is the level I really want us to focus on, or rather we're going to focus on this in the introduction video. And that third level we call the mechanics. Now, the mechanics are simply how the mind works. If content is what we think and programming is why we think it, mechanics is how does it actually do that? Now, the reason to share this is that it's a very, very simple way to look at the human mind, and most people find it extremely useful. So with that said, let me go on to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, and that was why bother? So why would you want to learn about the human mind? You've made it this far in life. You seem to be doing fine mostly. So why learn anything about the human mind? It's funny, when we ask people, and we work with thousands of people, most people don't have on their list of things to learn is how their mind works. It's just not on their radar screen. It's like most people are not interested in understanding more about gravity. It's just going on, it's working, it's keeping me on the planet. I don't need to think too much about that. Well, we're going to make a case in our introductory video that it's actually really useful to learn how the mind works. And this is why. if you look at how you live psychologically, so, what sort of day you're having, said another way, there are days where, things are just fine. Then there are days where, the wind is behind you, the sun is in your face, and you're leaping tall buildings, and, life is just clicking. You're in flow, you're in the zone, call it what you want, but life is just working out. It's not taking much effort. You seem to be able to know what to do. You get good ideas. And so you could materially say that on those days, psychologically, you're in better shape. You're doing better psychologically. Now, since life is an equal opportunity employer, there are the days which are the opposite of that. You get confused, it takes you 3 hours to write a 4-line email, you get distracted, and you get to the end of the day and nothing happens. So you could almost view life as a variable psychological experience. Well, if we asked you and gave you a choice, which psychological experience would you prefer to have more of? Now, it's an obvious question. I'm being a bit facetious by asking it. But would it be nice to spend more time in that zone of high performance, that mode where things seem to just work out? Well, what we have found is that the more you understand how the mind works, the more that becomes a possibility. So we think that's a useful thing to learn, because who wouldn't like to be psychologically at their best more of the time? Now, at a very, very simple level, and you'll see this in all aspects of your life, when you know how something works, you get to use it better. No one gave you a cell phone without some rudimentary explanation. They don't give you a computer without an explanation. They don't let you drive a car without explaining how it works. In fact, they go even further. They test you on how well you understand how the car works. So we think that understanding how the human mind works is essential. It's essential education. And of the thousands and thousands of people we've worked with, none of them have said it was something they didn't want to learn. So that's the why bother. That's the what we're going to cover. Now, I also wanted to explain how this is going to be a bit different. As you can realize just by looking, the mind is invisible. You can't put it in a jar, you can't point to it. So how do you learn about something that's invisible? Well, it requires a different perspective. It requires a different view. And said in another way, it requires you to realize something. A good analogy would be learning to ride a bicycle. If I'd given you a 1-hour PowerPoint presentation about how to ride a bicycle and how you needed to have balance, it probably wouldn't help you too much. On the other hand, if I got you on a bike and I got you to feel how the bike was, at some point you'd get balance, you'd realize balance, you'd intuitively see how to have balance. Now, it wouldn't be a cognitive thing. It wouldn't be like, oh yes, I can describe it in 10 steps. You just sort of get it. Now, what we're going to explain to you can be learned intellectually. I mean, it's a very, very simple framework, but the real value will be if you can learn it at a deeper level, learn it at the level of an intuitive realization. In the same way that, all through your life when you've been struggling to learn something, at some point it just all clicked and came together. That's the type of learning that we think will be most helpful for you to do in the introductory program. So that brings me to my last point, some suggestions about how to do that. Well, if you notice when you were trying to ride a bike or trying to ski or do anything that was a bit difficult, the more you applied yourself, usually the worse it got. Someone was giving me a really interesting example of this the other day. They took their son, I think their 7-year-old son, to a golf range where kids could learn how to hit the ball. And they hardly got any instruction. And his son steps up, and within a few strokes, the kid's hitting the ball 50, 60 yards, which for a kid of 7 who's never played golf, it's quite incredible. Anyway, the kid finishes his turn, he comes over, and the dad says, look, here are a bunch of things you could do differently. Do this with your eyes, do this with your hands, be careful with your shoulders. Now you can see where this story is going, right? A few times later, it's the kids go up there, guess what? He can't hit the ball. It's going nowhere. He's missing everything. Because what is the child trying to do? The child is in his head trying to figure out and remember all the things that his dad told him. Now, the dad sees this and goes, damn, I shouldn't have said anything. So when the kid comes off after his turn, he says, listen, forget everything I told you. Don't work it. Just go up there, relax, have a good time. And by the time the kid goes up for his third go, he relaxes, he forgets all the advice his dad gave him, and he's soon hitting the ball 50, 60 yards again. So paradoxically, the way to get the most out of our program is actually not to work hard. What we would recommend is that you just sit there like you're listening to music. Now, unless you're a concert pianist, unless music is your industry and your profession, most people just sit there and let it wash over them. Or you'll go and see a play and you'll just sit there and it will wash over you. And at the end of both events, if I asked you how it was, you'd be able to tell me. So there's this capacity in us, which is not intellectual, that knows how to intuitively absorb things. It's the same thing that happens on holiday. You go on holiday and you come back and a friend comes over and they say, Robin, how was the holiday? And I don't have to go to any notes. I don't have to, pull up information. I just sit there and I seem to remember all these things about my holiday. Well, it's a natural capacity. So what we would suggest is be comfortable, let it flow over you. We're going to send you some material afterwards that will help you sort of reinforce or digest better what you've learned, but don't work it. And if you're bored, that's fine. If you don't like it, that's fine. Maybe stop watching and then only watch when the video comes out. So really, the less you work hard, the more you'll get out of it. So hopefully this preparation video is going to help you with the introduction. I just want to put up some information just to end. This is information for you to be able to either contact me if you need beforehand. Maybe you got a specific question. Maybe you want to know something, what's suitable, what's not. Maybe something I've explained wasn't clear. So don't hesitate to contact me. And if you need to know more about us, our bios, what we do, also listed is our website. So thank you all for watching. Looking forward to either seeing you myself in one of the introduction videos, or maybe you'll see one of my colleagues. And thanks so much for taking the time. Take care. Bye.